Hey, FlashPoint Army, are you looking for truth and news all in the spirit of faith? Well, don't forget to click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to stay connected. Not a part of the FlashPoint Army? Sign up for the latest email updates at govictory.com/FP signup and join us as we stand for truth and freedom. Let's talk about the world stage real quick before I have to let you go. Get your quick comment. I wanted to let the people hear what you have to say about Hamas invading Israel. Joe Biden is supposed to be there tomorrow on Wednesday. Do you think this is a sign of good things, or is this just a political move?
I fear it's just politics with him. I don't know what kind of reception he will get. When you think that his policies contributed to this violence in Israel, it is the most heinous violence I've ever seen. I couldn't even look at the footage coming out. It was too painful to look at. And his policy with this Iran deal and funding basically Hamas and some of the most hardened, barbaric terrorists around the globe. Had he not done that, I don't believe that attack would have happened. And so I don't know how he'll be received. I have a feeling it won't go well. I think it is political. What he really should do, if he cares, is to immediately tear up that Iran deal, to work hard to stop the additional $8 billion he freed up for Iran to spend on funding terrorism. He needs to work to pull that back, and he needs to apologize, frankly, for funding this absolute despicable leadership. I shouldn't even call it leadership. I use that word loosely in Iran. They're actually hurting the Iranian people. There's a lot of Iranian people that are struggling under the Ayatollah, and they're struggling. They're hungry. They don't have food. The economy's in shambles, and the Iranian people are struggling under this absolutely horrific leadership in Iran, which is against the people and for terrorists.
Kari Lake, you can follow her at KariLake.com. Thank you, Kari, for coming by Flashpoint. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you. All right, well, one of our own is still on the road, our good friend Lance Wallnau. I feel like it's where's Wallnau the last couple of weeks. Where is he today? Well, I sat down with him not too long ago to get the latest from him. He's in Vienna. Lance Wallnau, let me get his take on what's going on in the world today. Watch. With me now, Lance Wallnau from Vienna. Lance, you're out of the country still. Good to have you back.
It's good to be back, Gene. We've gone from Prague, and now Vienna. And it's been quite an excursion over here. How about yourself?
Well, we're doing good here. But Lance, I want to know, what are you hearing? You're traveling the world there. So what about this Middle Eastern issue with Israel and Hamas? Are you still hearing rumblings there?
No, well, here's the thing. I wanted to talk to you about this, Gene. The media is covering this thing completely differently here than in the United States. Now, of course, you have a certain grace period, I think, in the West, because they're all anxious about what Israel's doing and humanitarian efforts for Gaza. But I mean, here, the BBC and these various outlets are actually ramped up already on an anti-Israel bias. The protests that are going on. They've had, we have people that that I've been with that have gone to France, and they've already had to disperse kind of like disruptions that are going on with thousands of people protesting on behalf of Hamas. And this is the part that I think is so interesting, that in our country, I think it's because we have the second, or maybe the highest concentration of Jewish people outside of Israel. There's a tendency to be a little bit more objective. You got Ben Shapiro and different people really hammering the Israeli position. But man, in Europe, you don't have that defense happening at all. And it's surprising that Hamas has committed such an atrocious act. It's like 9/11 and having whole nations coming out cheering for this, for Al-Qaeda. It's really bizarre. I hardly expected it.
This seems to have come, for us here in the West, it seems like it's come out of nowhere, this support for Hamas. I mean, we're seeing it University of Wisconsin, there are big protests there at Times Square in New York City. We're seeing it all over the U.S., and it's a bit bizarre. Why do you think what's happened that has gotten us to this place, Lance? Do you see, is there anything that we've missed over the past decade? Because this seems to be a bit bizarre.
No, actually, it makes more sense, doesn't it, when you think about how many 100 million Arabs do you have and how many million Jews do you got? You got 8 million Jews I think it's in Israel, and maybe 2 million are in Boca Raton or something. The Jewish people is a small number. I mean, they punch way above their weight. They're less than 1% of the global population. They rank number 7 in terms of aggregate contribution, technology, output, Nobel Prizes, et cetera. They fight for their survival. And so what is sad about that is that, and Derek Prince once wrote this, he said, the problem with Israel is for you to stand with Israel against the aggregate economic, military, and populist weight of the Arab Muslim nations. You have to do it on the basis of a moral conviction exclusively. You have to honestly do it it's like, remember when the embassy move happened and we covered it on FlashPoint? Right. There was 190 nations that voted, like a third of them abstained, 2/3 voted against, and 8 countries voted for the embassy move to Jerusalem. The United States, Togo, Micronesia, and Guatemala. So Israel's always been in the minority.
All right, let's go back to the skirmish, the war going on in Israel. About 200 now, the latest word is about 200 hostages that are in the tunnels or related places there. What do you think Israel is going to do about this, Lance? I mean, they want to get their people out. Typically, they would go in, bomb the tunnels, and shut them down. Well, they can't do that now with hostages. Do you see an answer to this?
Hamas is crazy. So the problem they've got is if you're dealing with a rational actor, like somebody who wants to live, and who maybe will trade their life for the hostage's life, you might have a reasonable hope. How in the world is Israel going to do this when these Hamas is almost like a suicide bomber who, before you'll even get the hostage, they'll take the hostage out. That's how bad the situation is. It's going to be this is why prayer, oddly enough, it isn't like the last resort. It's the primary resort.
That's right.
Because only superior intelligence or some kind of bargaining chip that nobody's thinking about now could make a difference in this. But Israel has no choice in this matter. I want to put something in perspective here, because I did a little research. In the north, you have Hezbollah, and that's Iranian-funded terrorism in the north, coming through Lebanon and Beirut. In the south, you have Iranian terror coming from Gaza in Hamas. And as I said the other day, what really shocked me is when my daughter pointed out that in the days of Noah, 16th chapter of Genesis, the earth was filled with violence, and the word violence is Hamas. So as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the Son of Man returns. We're in the days of violence like Noah right now. In the South, Hamas has done something which is unprecedented. In the killing and slaughter of the innocent, the elderly, they didn't target, Gene, the kibbutzes that are in Gaza. They went outside of them and targeted specifically kibbutzes which were there since 1967, meaning they wanted to do something that would be so incendiary, so unforgivable, so outrageous, that they would target not just the disputed occupants, but the innocent occupants that have been there since 1967. They are doing that because there's a spirit behind them that wants to make it impossible for Israel to go back to normal, for Iran, for Egypt, for Saudi Arabia to normalize the Jew. They're forcing Israel to have to react in such an exterminate the enemy mentality that they will push back the agenda of tolerance for Israel 10 years. That's how demonic this is. It's like we're going to do something so outrageous that we're going to force you to act in such a way that we're going to neutralize you from any peace accords that Donald Trump put in place for the next decade. That's how demonic this is.
How much, and this is, it seemed like a softball, but how much, Lance, does it weigh into what Hamas is doing, or Iran, how much is it directly related to the weakness or perceived weakness of the American administration?
Well, it is a softball in this sense, Gene. Yeah. Can you imagine them wanting to take 100 American hostages and kill 25 while Trump was in office? I mean, Trump would have done. He would have done like hopscotch. He would have said, "Forget Hezbollah, forget Hamas. I'm going right for Iran." And by the way, they know what Trump would do. You got four oil terminals. That's your income. That's your basically your economics is based on 4 terminals. I'm taking them out now. Boom. He would crush their economy overnight. Trump would do that. They know Biden and Blinken are nut jobs. They know that because the first thing Blinken did was, this is the guy who's handling our foreign affairs statecraft. He wrote a tweet saying, as soon as Hamas did these atrocities, I think we should have a ceasefire. Let's talk about how we can get along. And he had to delete the tweet because it was so tone deaf and stupid. That was his first reaction.
That's crazy.
Let's appease ISIS. Let's see if Hitler wants to have a birthday party. Let's get along.
Absolutely.
And of course, Iran would only do this if they knew Blinken was in charge of the State Department.
And so true. So true. All right. So as we wrap this time up with you, Lance, I need to know, it does not seem like a 2-state solution is ever going to be on the table for Netanyahu in Israel, nor should it be. However, how do you see this playing out? I mean, and I know as of the time that we're recording this, who knows what can happen. However, as we're looking at all of these players with Iran, we're getting a lot of words that Iran is definitely sending, they're definitely funding everything that's coming across the border there from the north. They're definitely, we're seeing all of this happen. What's the end game here? How is this going? Is it going to be a long war? Are we going to see them take them out? I mean, I agree with you. It seems like why not just take them out where it hurts to get rid of their refineries? And that would seem to be the idea.
Well, that would be the idea if, dare I say, if God was on our side. I have no confidence that the Lord is pleased with the United States. I'm looking at who he's allowed. This is my thinking about political things these days, that God judges you through the rulers that he allows to be there. And so what looks to me like we're suffering a kind of form of divine discipline in America. In the form of bad leaders, and if you want to repent, then God will give you good leaders. And so I don't think while you have bad leaders, you get good victories. So I'm praying we don't get involved with military confrontation. For all the chest thumping that Lindsey Graham wants to do, we need to stay away from war. I saw Afghanistan. We weren't even in a shooting war, and we shot ourselves. So I don't want to go into a confrontation with any country right now. But here's the deal with Israel. In 2006. Gene, Hezbollah kidnapped 2 Israeli soldiers and killed 3. The response of Israel was to bombard Beirut for a period of like 34 consecutive days, the airports, the bridges, the infrastructure, the banking. When they interviewed the leader of Hezbollah after that, they said, was it a mistake? And he said, man, if we had thought that even they were going to do 1% of what they did, we would have reconsidered attacking them in the first place. They went crazy.
Yeah.
And here's what the Jewish people know. And I actually got the quote. It's from Ehud Barak, who was the prime minister. He said, you think with Hamas or with Hezbollah, you're going to do something crazy. You will never out-crazy us. We may be civilized. We may be like a villa in the middle of a jungle, but you will never out-crazy a Jew from his own neighborhood. We will out-crazy you. So what you're about to see is out-crazy. What happens now is Hamas is going to be delivered such a message. It wouldn't surprise me if they bulldoze neighborhoods. They're going to gut those tunnels. I'm sorry about it's going to be difficult to see how to get the hostages out of this, but they're going to do such devastation to Hamas that the issue is going to be who is going to manage Gaza, because the Jewish people will not be able to manage that territory when they get done with it because it'll be flattened out. It'll have to be something else. The bad news for us, or the news that should concern us, Gene, is Putin has calculated that with all of that Arab sympathy for Palestinians, he would probably now would be the time for him to turn almost like a biblical character against the Jew. And so he is coming out with a policy saying to Syria and Iraq and to Egypt and to Saudi Arabia, perhaps it's time for a two-state solution. Let China and Russia and the Middle East gather together against the United States and Israel, and let's settle this. I'm just saying isn't it interesting that we always talk about Rosh and Magog and that war?
Sure.
Right now, Putin has pivoted in the direction of, I think I'm going to court China and the Arab world and come against Israel and become the champion of the two-state solution, even though it's a bad idea that cannot work.
Lance Wallnau, quick travel home. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you for joining us tonight about what happened. Listen, you may have heard about Representative Corey Mills from Florida. This guy, he's my new hero. Look at some of these tweets he posted. Our office and team has gotten out 96 Americans from Israel, 77 of which I was on myself. We've secured a charter aircraft. I'm proud to report we've evacuated Bill Hazenga's son, and he's safely out of Israel. And you can see some of the pictures here as they go through them of, he gets up there and he decides he's going to help. And why would he help? You wonder? Why would he get involved and make a point to get involved personally? Well, let me show you his statement. Watch this.
We're on our second trip. We just conducted our second operation. We've got 45 Americans we were able to successfully get out of Israel into Jordan. We did 32 the day prior to that, and so we're continuing to try and get out as many. Again, if the federal government and the Biden administration doesn't want to do their job, then real Americans will step up and do it for them. This isn't the first time that we've had to do this. We did the same thing in Afghanistan in 2021, and here we are again in 2023. Weakness invites aggression. We know why this is occurring, but you prioritize your citizens and ensure their safety above all things. That is our job as elected officials. And I'm not going to stop, and I won't be stopped, from continuing to try and help the American people and to help our allies and hold our adversaries accountable. Thank you for your support. God bless you.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, this guy did it on his own. You heard what he said. Joe Biden, the administration not doing it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to help, and Americans are going to help. You got to love that about Americans that rise to the occasion and say, we're not going to back down. We're going to stand up and we're going to help people get home. And that's exactly what he did. Well, with me in studio tonight are two brothers, Joshua and Caleb Coulson, who were actually in Israel at the time. Welcome to the studio, guys.
Thank you, sir. It's so good to be here.
Thanks, Gene.
Yeah. Okay. So explain a little bit about why you were there and what happened. Now, people may recognize you because this is the Bearded Bible Brothers podcast. So you want to make sure you go download that. But Joshua, let me start with you. Explain what was going on there.
We had been in Israel for about a week. We were filming our new series for the program, going all over the country. And we were standing in front of the second largest mosque in Israel at the time. And I was talking about Josiah and the Reformation that he had gone through. And all of a sudden, missiles started firing overhead. And without a beat, we kept talking about Jesus. And next thing you know, sirens went off. And it didn't calm down from that point. It was evident that things were happening. And in fact, once we stopped filming at that moment was when we had to look up and see, what's happening here? Oh, we're going into war. So,
yeah, I mean, Caleb, let me bring you in here. What were you thinking as this was going on?
Well, God had prepared us in advance, believe it or not. He said, be ready for war to break out. And it's not anything special on our part. He literally gave us a vision of rockets going overhead, which is what exactly we saw. We saw the chemtrails over our head and the Iron Dome was activated. So we were prepared to share the gospel and to share it with peace and with love. And there are many people who needed it at that time. And we're just very thankful that God used us in that capacity.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Now, Joshua, you were saying to me earlier about once that barrage had ended, you went out to see people. What were you Why were you on the streets? I think most people would be hunkering down. You were out there.
Well, first of all, I'm large and I don't really fit in bunkers well, so I didn't need any of that. But we wanted to make sure that people knew that they could have confidence in God protecting them. And so we went out to talk to people, and we had a lot of people come up to us. We had been seen around the country because we were filming, and they would come up to say, hey, you're the giant Samson guy we saw in Caesarea. What are you doing here? And God just made so many opportunities for us to talk to them and to put at peace all of the stress and the fears of the what ifs. And it was an amazing time to be able to pray for people in the name of Jesus in the streets of Jerusalem and other parts of Israel. And it was just a huge blessing.
So people at home here in America, it's hard for us to understand especially those of us that have never been. If you've never been, you don't really have an understanding of the Middle East, number one, or Israel, number two, what that is like. Obviously, you saw some things you probably would rather not see again.
Most definitely. It's another world over there. And in this small country that's smaller than New Jersey, you have many differing beliefs and views all vying for the same place. And so at any given time, there's unrest in many different ways and many different views. Here in America, if you say, I believe in Jesus, well, there's just a bunch of people that may not believe in Jesus, but you can say that in the very same streets in Israel and all of a sudden have a death warrant on your head because of how strong the beliefs are in these different places. So it's a different world entirely.
Caleb, you started seeing that this wasn't going to end anytime soon.
Yes.
And your first thought is, well, we need to leave the country. I'm sure you're thinking at some point it's time to go. What was the first thing that you tried to do?
Well, first and foremost, we wanted to finish our message that we came there to film. And no matter the situation, we knew that it was impending because it was about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so we actually completed 3 days of shooting during the midst of war and running back and forth to the bunker because we were forced to go into bomb shelters many times. And when we didn't, we wanted to hit the streets, like Josh said. We wanted to alleviate fears, and we spoke to many people. We met so many wonderful believers, and we had that opportunity to speak to them. And believe it or not, many of the Jews we spoke to said, we trust in God. We know He's looking out for us, and that's why we're confident and we're going out in the streets with you. And the Lord is moving on the hearts of the Israeli people, I believe, because they have seen how God has delivered them in times past during many wars supernaturally, and I believe He's going to do it again.
Joshua, how did you make the connection with Representative Kari Mills?
You know, there's certain things in life where you know that you had nothing to do with it. And this was one of those situations. We decided when war broke out that we wanted to update people back home. We wanted to share both for our family's sake and the idea of boots on the ground, what's really happening beyond what the news is saying. And so we began to film these updates. I was very tired. We'd been filming for days and days and days with very little sleep. And so I just wanted to be lazy and film on my balcony. My brother said, no, I feel like we have to go on the roof. I'm like, why would God tell you have to go do cardio? I have a balcony right here. But sure enough, we go to the roof and we're standing there setting up our shot, and a woman's on a balcony and she's looking over and she's waving at us. And we thought maybe this is another person who's seen us before. And she said, hey, come here. I want to talk to you. She said somebody, her producer actually had sent her one of our updates the night before. This was Brenda Crouch. Paul Jr. comes out. We have Paul Jr. and Brenda Crouch on the balcony, which was blowing my mind because they are icons in production world of faith-based production. And they came down. She said, can I take a selfie with you? Long story short, she ended up giving us the personal cell phone number for Kari Mills, which enabled us to be able to call him and take their spot that they had on this extraction.
So you had a chance to sit down and talk with Representative Mills. Tell us a little bit about that.
I sat down with this man who, by the way, is the same age as me, which makes me feel a little unconfident about what I've accomplished when you look at this man's stats, and just ask him, what are you doing here and why are you doing it? And obviously you can hear all the different things he said to everybody else, but he was just very real with me. He said, look, I was adopted. I faced this trial and that trial, and I had every opportunity in my life to just say it's somebody else's job, but I realized that if I was going to do something with my life, it was my job. And when I see people here in an administration who is not doing anything to help, when I see other countries sending in planes and rescue efforts to save their people, but yet still Joe Biden hasn't done a single thing, he said, that makes it my job because I have the opportunity and I have the resources. And so I knew I had to do something.
That's good. Caleb, what do you think? Are you going to travel with your brother anymore, or are you done?
This seems to happen a lot to Josh. He doesn't go to the cool places to travel. He goes to the war-torn places. He goes to the places where people are in need. And yes, war breaks out. But I believe that's why God chose us to go at this time, is so that we could bring his truth, his peace, and his love to those in need. And yeah, I do it again. And we actually are going back to Israel this spring. So no problem.
Yeah. Well, we'll connect with you when you go then as well. All right, Joshua, tell me about you were able to get out of the Israel. You walked across to Jordan, and you were in a hotel for a while. And then as you left, the hotel was overrun. Is that what I hear?
Just saw on Twitter today in the news pictures of the embassy, the Israeli embassy in Amman, being overrun, on fire, terrorist activity, and that was literally steps from our hotel. So to know that we left our hotel in Israel, and we received word that the next day it was attacked on foot. We cross a border to find out that the next day that border is closed. And then we're in a hotel in Amman before we fly back, only to find out that when we arrive home, that the embassy close to there is attacked. So every step was ordered by God. And we were there for a good amount of time. So it wasn't just like as soon as war broke out, we ran. We were there for a solid week once war broke out. But when Caleb felt in the Spirit, God said, it's time to get out. And he told me, I'm here to listen. My brother hears from God. We took those steps, and God made every single path happen. And right behind us, danger, unrest, attack. We were safe in every step.
Amen. What God has done, let no man put us under. Listen, that is a wonderful story. Thank you, Josh. Caleb Colson, listen, you need to follow the Bearded Bible Brothers. Go find their podcast and all that they're doing, and make sure you follow them. And guys, let's stay in touch and make sure we get the latest update on you.